Hi, this is Dr. Traci Moreno, psychologist, and today we are talking about what I think are the top faux pas for therapists while doing therapy. And this is based on, basically the complaints that I've heard over the years from clients. So, of course, this is nothing to do with any ethical or legal obligations because those are more than faux pas. So we're not talking about those types of things. So what we want to talk about is, first thing, one of the most common things is us talking more than listening, right? So make sure that you're really listening more and asking open-ended questions. And when we do want to share feedback and talk about our recommendations, it's always good to just kind of like even ask the client and say, can I share my experience with that? Do you mind? Or is it okay if I give you some feedback on that or something like that? But, try not to interrupt the client and, just really make sure that they're doing the majority of talking and you're not the one sharing. And what you do share shouldn't be stories about yourself. We want to be really careful with self-disclosure. That's also going to be another topic. But, we want to make sure that what we are sharing is relevant to them and the feedback is, or recommendations is regarding exactly what the topic of conversation for them is. So another one, having your own agenda and not meeting the client where they're at. So a lot of times, the clients will come in and they will talk about a problem they're having. And I do this all the time, but luckily I do it in my mind and I stop myself. But I think it's very natural for us to start to assume what the client wants help with and what the problem is. And so I have it in my mind, but I always, once the client finishes, telling me what they want to tell me, I always verify and I say, how do you want my help with this? I have a couple of ideas, but I want to make sure it's, I want to see where you're at with this and what you're thinking. So, and we also, they may not be ready to problem solve necessarily. I'm always thinking I have difficulty, it's harder for me with clients who just want that to come and vent and have that support and encouragement. I mean, I do it, but it's harder for me because I'm very proactive and I work very fast and I, very quickly psychologically dig and I just want to do the work. But we have to see where they're at with it, and that's very important because that's when you'll have clients that just don't come back, and so we want to really keep that in the back of our mind and really be checking in with the client periodically and saying, hey, we can, and of course we can say, hey, sometimes I'll say, I understand you're not ready to go there, but, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least let you know, eventually when you're ready, that is something we should address, but it's going to be when you're ready. I always remind the client that I work for them and they're the ones in charge, right? And so we always go at their pace, although I will be encouraging them and pushing a little bit, but, and I always encourage them to push back or, let me know that they're just not ready. And I tell them even specifically how to do that. I say to them, what you can say to me is, I'm not ready to go there. Or, I'm just not ready yet or something like that. Because, even them being in therapy means that some people, are struggling with being able to speak up for themselves. So we can't assume that, oh, well, they would have told me if they weren't ready. That just doesn't happen. What they do is they just don't come back. Okay. So another one is telling them what to do. Please, please, please do not do this. We cannot be responsible. And you do not want a client blaming you for a decision they made and said, well, you told me to do this. I've had clients come in and say that, with talking about their marriage, that they said, oh, this marriage isn't going to work. You cannot do that. That is not our job. And we are not taking responsibility or blame for that. We are, listening, and we're challenging them on, their decisions. We can play out different pathways, different choices with them. We can, challenge them with, different questions of, trying to get to, like, what is this really, why do you want this? What will this look like? And then you let them make the ultimate decision. If anything, the closest I would ever get to telling them what to do is if you want to, share, and this goes back to self-disclosure and, not even self-disclosure, scratch that. What I'll say is the closest I've ever gotten to telling them something to do is I will say, if it were me, and this is just me, right? Because you have to decide for yourself, because you're the one that has to live with the consequences of your decision. You've got to remind them of that. And so, and reiterate that at times. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have our little farm back here. So, just, and I just reiterate, like, hey, if it were me, this is what I would do, but you got to remember, they're not us. Right? And so just remind them of that. Another one is pushing too much or too little, right? And so we kind of hit on that a little bit just now, but you want to push. Our job is to push. We can't, what is the point for somebody to just sit there and, nod their head and, just agree with them and support them unconditionally and, and time is up. We can support somebody by still challenging them or calling, I say calling them out, right? But, or kind of like saying, well, are you sure about that? What about this? Could this be happening? Things like this. And it's okay if there's resistance or, they could be in some sort of avoidance or denial and they say no. That's okay. But that's still our job to kind of go there and bring that up. And we also will talk about resistance as well in another episode. So, we want to push, but we also can't push too much, because that's where we lose them too. And this isn't, when I say they don't come back, it's not about losing a client, right? It's about, them having a bad experience in therapy, feeling unsupported, feeling unheard, unlistened to, unvalidated, and then deciding that therapy just isn't for them and never going back. That's the tragedy here, right? And so we want to really avoid that, and that's why just kind of meeting them at and being supportive, but also being able to give them that little push. And once you develop a trust and rapport with somebody, you will be able to safely push them a little bit more. And a lot of times I'll just kind of have a look and go, is it okay if I challenge you on that a little bit? And most of them will say yes. Or sometimes I'll say, hey, what do you need from me today? Do you want me to, challenge you and we can, kind of talk back and forth on this? Or do you just need some support today? And they'll tell you exactly what they need. And that's what you need to give them, right? And you can even say, like I was saying earlier, you could say, hey, just in the back of your mind, we both know that this is something that will need to be addressed at some point, but you know what? We'll figure out together when the right time is, and we're not going to do it until you're ready, right? Give them that comfort. Give them that safe place. That is our number one job of anything else. Forget about all the interventions, right? Our number one job is to provide a safe place for every single client, okay? So the next one, being judgmental. Believe it or not, there are so many therapists that are very judgmental and express that, right? And we can't do this. And that goes back to providing a safe place. We cannot judge what is right and wrong for them. And believe me, you're going to have things that people are saying or that they're engaged in or doing that you don't agree with. And that's okay, because it's not our life, it's theirs. And you're here to help them, right? Again, we can challenge them, we can talk to them and make sure that what they're doing is, congruent with their authentic self and their goals, priorities, belief systems, things like that. if we see that, but if that's something that they're okay with, that's something that we as therapists have to work through. And that's part of, that could be countertransference, which again, another topic upcoming that we will talk about. And so just be very careful with that, and do your own outside work to get over those judgments. And that also goes back to have that poker face. Don't let them see you sweat. Don't let them see that judgment at all, because that's another immediate shutdown for them. All right, last one: asking questions for your own curiosity rather than for the purpose of treatment. Now, this one is less, well, I don't know. I think it's less common than the other ones, but it still happens, and it's still very important to remember. We shouldn't be asking questions based off like, oh, we just want to know, right? This happens a lot with trauma cases. So, especially when somebody's been through, something, and you're like, oh my gosh, like what happened? Like what, how did that happen? And we start asking these questions, but not treatment based, not for clinical reasons. It becomes just of our own curiosity, which might be very hurtful to the client, especially with trauma. And especially if they're not trying, we don't want them to be reliving the trauma. We're not trying to re-traumatize anybody, and we will talk, we will talk more specifically about, recommended treatments for trauma and how to go about that. But, just in general, just check yourself in your head, and don't make sure that the questions that you're asking or how you're challenging them is 100% for clinical reasons and for the progress of their treatment. So if you have any others that you've seen, that would be really great. Oh, I just thought of another one off the top of my head is, and this is kind of individual. This isn't necessarily a faux pas, but some people have very strong opinions on this, is when a client is actually processing emotions, or even like going through anger, and they start yelling, or they're starting to cry, is kind of interrupting that process. I come from a place of don't interrupt the process. I've had interns sitting in with me in therapy sessions where the client, breaks down and starts crying, and the intern stopped and offered them the Kleenex and handed them the box of Kleenex. Well, that's very polite, but what you did is you just interrupted the therapeutic process. And, they immediately just kind of stop. And the whole, it's completely interruptive to the process. So I make sure, there's Kleenex and what they need right in front of them. It's right there. They can see it. They can grab it on their own when they want to. And and a lot of times that's because of our own uncomfortability with people showing emotions. And obviously, if you're going to be a therapist, you've got to get comfortable with that. So, I can't think of any others off the top of my head. So if you have any others, I would love to hear that in the comments section. This could actually be a fun one, actually. Oh, I'll tell you a personal one. So part of our doctoral program was that we had to complete so many hours of our own individual therapy. And I had this one therapist, no lie, actually fell asleep, nodded off fully several times in session as I'm talking to him. I was like, well, it's a really good thing that I don't have self-esteem problems, because that would have just really destroyed me. He was literally like, you could just see his eyes like rolling back. And it was to the point where he was like, and had to catch himself. I was like, are you kidding me? So a lot of times and it's a great idea to participate in your own therapy with different therapists, because that will definitely show you a lot of what how you want to be, and but maybe even more of what you don't want to be. So, and same thing with mentors, even with me, with your supervisors. It's very important that you decide who you want to be as a therapist, right? And it should be authentic and genuine to who you also are personally, because that's where you're going to be most effective, is when you're very genuine. So you don't have to, again, don't be anybody else, and you may have to do it for the job, do things how they want you to do it. But when you're going to develop, and you're going to, get other jobs, and maybe if private practice is your goal, and then you're going to be on your own. So take all the good from everybody, leave the bad, and develop your own way. All right. Thanks.